Welcome to Zoom Palestine, and I'm going to play some Palestinian music until everybody comes on board. So hang on. This is a wonderful Palestine music mix. Okay, enjoy for a few minutes until everyone else joins us. We're playing traditional Arab music from Palestine while we're waiting for Frank and other people to come online. So we spend the first few minutes just enjoying Palestinian music. واشرف على الوادي وقول يا مرحبا نسمها وبلادي يا ربي انزل مطر تغرق الوادي وعمل طريقي جسري وقطع كليها والرزنة الرزنة كل الهنا فينا وش عملتي الرزنة الله يجازيها يا رايحين عصفت صفولي نيتكم ثلثين عمري قضف هوا بنيتكم حلفتكم بالنبي وبديني ميتكم ميتنا عين عذرا شربي نصرانية شمالي يا هوا الديري شمالي علي بوابه تفتح شمالي وانا لرافق الريح الشمالي عسى الله يعود وعارض Well, that was lovely. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. So I believe we have Frank with us.
Hello.
Hi, Frank. Let me end the screen share and welcome. Welcome to you, Frank. Welcome to Zoom Palestine, everyone, for our, I think, fourth meeting. And as I started doing last night, let me end the screen share. Should make sure it's off. Okay, should be off. I'm going to light the candle to symbolize that what we're trying to do is bring light into the situation on Palestine, to cast light on the darkness, which is very much what this holiday season is about. Christmas and celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, and the New Year is to shed light onto the darkness. And certainly now we have a terrible problem of darkness in the Holy Land. So our goal is to invite people to discuss the issues, the serious issues that are going on now in Palestine that people need to know about, and then also to invite the arts to refresh our souls and bring hope and understanding deeper to possibly transform the hearts of people, because that's the only thing that's going to work, is for people's hearts to change. And I welcome Frank Romano, who most of you know is our wonderful, well-known, fearless activist who has literally put his life on the line many, many times for the situation in Palestine. And I want to also reassure all of you who may know I was in the hospital for a couple of days. No big deal. I have to take a baby aspirin and some other pill, but I'm okay. I passed every test they gave me in New York hospital. I should get a degree from them. I passed it so well, but I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling great, actually. So thank you for your good wishes and prayers, and ready to keep up the fight. So Frank, tell us what's going on with the prisoners situation. And the situation is dire right now in Palestine.
Well, to kind of flow with the idea of light, in spite of the challenges of today and the darkness, as you put it, very well put it, Jackie, The activists in the Holy Land are still hopeful that we can bring the light and make it so bright to shove out the darkness. But for right now, we're going through a very difficult period. And so I'll just cite a former, actually general, Yusuf Sarkawi, is an activist. And he was a former PA general, but he's doing a lot of activist work now. Sees what's going on today, and I'm not going to focus right on the prisoner issue, more on what's happening in the field of the West Bank, in particular, the settlers. The settlers have become, the last week or two, are organizing these kind of gangs all over the West Bank today. And the former General Yusuf Sarkawi said this is reminiscent of almost the Stern and the Haganin gangs that infiltrated Palestine way back. Were very violent and became really the nucleus of the Israeli army and were engaged in massacres. Well, the positive side, which I think we want to just always keep looking at the positive side, a former Haganah member, Ana Merchamis, with Giuliano Merchamis, formed what they call the Freedom Theater in Jenin. Later on, she married actually Mrs. Merchamis married Mr. Chamis, who is a Christian Palestinian, and they went into the heart of the West Bank in Jenin, of all places, and established a theater. So it's possible. But so right now, as the general said, reminiscent of those times when the settlers, the Israeli fanatics, got together and really, besieged the entire area. And so there was a former activist, Mohammed Baraja, was interviewed recently by a Palestinian neighborhood network out of Bethlehem, said that these attacks that have been going these last 2 weeks, we're talking about all over the West Bank, where the settlers have been throwing rocks, have been killing livestock, invading homes, supported unfortunately by the Israeli police, is more of a dress rehearsal. This is now getting into the shadowy part. Hopefully this is not true, but he says he's concerned that could be a dress rehearsal for more serious and bigger attacks. And he cited the ones in the past, the one where Goldstein, a former settler, massacred people in the Ibrahim Mosque way back in 1994, and then the death of Abu Qudar in 2014, a young Palestinian taken and burned alive. This was, of course, in response to the 3 settlers being killed in the West Bank. But these attacks against mosques today, in fact, we were talking about last week where the Gethsemane Garden church, the settlers tried to burn it, but there have been the burning of mosques, churches, homes, and it was called price tag. And often the settlers get upset over the fact that the Israeli government is not authorizing, such as destruction of Kana Akmar, and they get upset. They said the price tag for delaying, destroying and taking the Palestinian lands and giving it to the settlers is, the attacks. In any case, a friend of mine, Ahmed Suleiman from Tekoa, and Tekoa is not far. Tekoa, town of Tekoa, is not far from the Tekoa settlement, right near Bethlehem. And Tekoa settlement, has a group there. Rabbi Froman, who's unfortunately passed away, an activist Jewish rabbi, worked with the Palestinians. It was kind of ironic, though. It's always the irony of the whole situation, where here he is, this active rabbi helping the Palestinians, organizing donors to rebuild mosques that were destroyed by settlers. himself a settler living in a settlement. It's the irony, and
What was
that
his
that
name, Frank? What was his name again?
Rabbi Froman,
Right.
Rabbi Froman.
Yeah.
Even spoke with him, an activist rabbi from Tekoa. Well, nearby, this is a Tekoa settlement. You have a very strong group of settlers that have been attacking the Tekoa village. And part of this massive synchronized settler attack all through the West Bank. And the Palestinians responded by throwing rocks at the settlers. The Israeli police go into the town of Tekoa to investigate and to go into the homes, including the home of Ahmed Suleiman, or the homes of his family, to try to confiscate their telephones to find out who was throwing rocks at the settlers. They were doing that to defend their homes from invasion by the settlers and from the attacks. So this has been going on and on, just to give us a rundown of what's going on recently. Like, for instance, some settlers from the Ele Hanhal settlement east of Bethlehem sat on a ridge throwing rocks down on the Palestinians, and they killed 5 heads of their sheep, that damaged property, and all of it with impunity, because the Israeli police often do not monitor what they're doing and do not prevent the Israeli settlers from doing these things. Then we have Kiryan Arba settlers near Hebron, wounding a child and a young man, and Ramallah, and the residents of the village of Mukhayir, which, as we talked about last week, Jackie, that was the place where the 13-year-old young man who was out protesting, making the outpost into a settlement. And we have to talk about the settlement plan, and we'll talk about data in just a few minutes here, who was killed. Well, in that same village, we have settlers attacking again, this is right, the east of Ramallah in Al-Bireh, and then Mugir village attacking the Palestinians with rocks. And it's just, again, it's a concerted effort throughout the West Bank today. Very serious thing. So it's happening Kirbe El Kanub, town in the north of Hebron. And then we're talking about the 22nd, 23rd of December, just recently. And then Nablus, these have been, and then we have eyewitnesses to dozens of settlers throwing stones at Palestinian cars in the junction of the South Bethlehem. So literally all over this is happening, and we're going to try to understand what's going on here. So we'll get to the second part of this, Jackie, the settlements themselves. What is going on here? Well, the idea is, what is going on here is another branch of this idea of a de facto annexation. Now, we've heard about this idea, right, coming from the Israeli government, pretty well okayed, but not quite, by the American government, but implicitly okay to annex large portions of the West Bank. That's kind of been put on hold, as well as that ignominious deal of the century project. But de facto, you know how we define de facto, mean it's unofficially, this idea, and the idea is that the settlers have established many outposts. Now, people don't know what the outposts are. They are not official settlements on Palestinian lands. They're like, could be a tent or a trailer pushed somewhere and kicking out the Palestinians, or occupying Palestinian grazing land, and then having the Israeli police and soldiers protect them. And then if the Israeli government approves of this outpost, it becomes an official settlement. You have now 70 settlements all throughout the West Bank that are seeking to become legalized, which means this outpost becomes a settlement. And what happens is, it's like the settlement of Kafar al-Dumin and Ma'al al-Dumin. Inside, between the two settlements, we have Kana Akma, which is the Bedouin village. And what the settlers want is to push them out, put in an outpost that will bring the two settlements together into one. And of course, what this would do would cut off the North and South West Bank, break it up in two places, two parts of the West Bank. And the Palestinians, of course, can't communicate with each other. And the Palestinians from East Jerusalem can't get there because it will be all settlement. They can't go through those settlements to get there. So this overall the attacks, the theory is it's part of this de facto annexation, attacking the Palestinians, setting them back on their heels, legalizing the outposts, expanding the settlements, getting the Palestinians to withdraw from their lands with all this violence and extend the settlements. And the idea then is de facto annexing because of this huge parts of the West Bank, thanks to the extension of the settlements and their authorization by the Israeli government, and then without even becoming part of Israel, which was the annexation plan, de facto, unofficially, they're part of Israel because they've taken Palestinian lands. They are protected by the Israeli police. Israeli law governs them. So since the Israeli government has this strategy, say, well, okay, the annexation wasn't really approved. And to add to this pot, was it say, of difficult situation and the squeezing of the Palestinians, we have the normalization of the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and perhaps even Sudan, now connecting up with other Muslim countries and Arabs as well as from Egypt and from Jordan, who are allied with Israel. And the idea in the past was, and this is I'm going to bring this into the idea of annexation, is that these Arab countries said, sure, you can maybe with the creation of the Palestinian state, with giving them a certain amount of at least independence so they can have their own country, we will agree then to normalize relationship with you. But this card is taken away slowly but surely by these countries allying with Israel, completely taking the bargaining power away from the Arab countries that are supporting Palestine, and normalizing with Israel without agreeing to any type of Palestinian state. And at the same time, the settlers are attacking, joining the outposts, the settlements, taking more Palestinian land. There's absolutely no move for a durable peace with the Palestinians, whether they're a two-state solution or a one-state solution. It looks like on the ground that more and more land is being taken. The Palestinians are being pushed into these zones very similar to the Bantustans that were experienced in South Africa, and eventually, hopefully not, could end up like the Indian reservations in the US. So this is what I mean by the settlements encroaching, moving from outpost into legitimate settlements, harmonizing the settlements, fusing them together, kicking out the Palestinians into these outlying areas more and more. What is the settlement data? Let's talk about figures here now. Before the Oslo Accords, 1993, that were signed between Arafat and the Israeli government, there were about 144 settlements. Since then, they've grown to 550 settlements up to 2018. The number of settlers before like the Six-Day War in 1967, they're about, before Oslo, 252,000 settlers, and now there are about 850,000 settlers in the West Bank, again, occupying mostly illegal land that have been condemned by the International Court of Justice, these settlements, as being illegally obtained at the expense of the Palestinians. Now, what about acreage? Well, before Oslo, there were about 136,000 denims, which is about 35,000 acres that the settlements had under their control. Since then, we've got about 500,000 denims, which is about 120,000 acres, which in control by the settlements since the Oslo Accord, which is a difference of about 368%. And those are the figures. Talk about the walls everywhere, cutting up the West Bank like Swiss cheese, right? Where Palestinians can't communicate with themselves often, can't even cultivate their lands, which are taken from them because a wall has been built between their homes and the lands and given to the settlers or to allies of the Israeli government. There are about 839 barriers throughout Palestine. Finally, the last chapter of this, and then I really, hopefully there'll be questions and comments. And again, you don't have to agree with what I'm trying to share with you. We've got the Al-Aqsa area, the noble sanctuary that the Arabs call it, or the Temple Mount, is becoming a really point of dissension now, because another part of this whole thing, annexation, I believe it's part of annexation, is Israeli settlers or Israelis or Jews are storming often with under protection by the Israeli police, the Temple Mount area, which under the Oslo agreements was reserved for Muslims. I mean, to pray anyway. Non-Muslims can go there and Christians as well, but not really enter in the mosque, but not pray in that area. And they are going there, engaging in Talmudic rituals and pretty much provoking the Palestinians. What does this mean? Well, in a way, they have the right to be there. I mean, to go there, like anybody, you don't have to be a Muslim to go there. And in fact, there's proof, that the Second Temple was existed where the Al-Aqsa Mosque was. So that's very sacred to Israeli Jews, right? But the idea is not that. The idea is, as you put it, Jackie, this is to show there's a Jewish presence on the Temple Mount, another provocative presence. Say, we are here. This is the old city, and we are creating more and more apartments in East Jerusalem, the Palestinian area. We're squeezing you out, and we were also implying that perhaps we will have a permanent occupation of parts of the Temple Mount. So what's this all about?
Nonsense.
This is all kind of inspired the language of revolt. For instance, they're talking about another intifada, the Palestinians are. One indication was there was a 13, the idea of protesting, the Palestinians protesting this. We talked about it last week that Ali Nasser Abu Aliyah was killed when he was protesting the establishment of these outposts we talked about near Ramallah. And he was just engaged in a nonviolent protest, was killed. But these protests are expanding. They're saying, the Palestinians are expanding this into saying, this could be the beginning of a new intifada, especially when Mohammed Kamil, on just December 21st, last Monday, he entered the old city with kind of a Palestinian-made machine gun and shot and injured an Israeli policeman near Bab Hatat, which is near the Lion's Gate of the old city, and then he was eventually killed. And since then, and finally, the Palestinians are saying this is simply an indication. This Bab Hatta, they call it the Bab Hatta operation. The goal was to show that the status quo policy, in other words, the Israeli government is trying to maintain a status quo policy. That is to keep things the way they are, but encroach upon Palestinian land, including Al-Aqsa by the Israeli Jews, and bring it together as a state of Israel and kick out the Palestinians. This idea of collusion with the settlers as well all over the West Bank is creating a very unsettling feel of revolt now. And hopefully it won't turn into another bloody intifada that we've experienced not too long ago. And hopefully we can shed light on how we can get the bridges built, how we can bring the light back, how we can work together, and hopefully find a durable peace in the Holy Land.
Thank you, Frank. I want to welcome my dear friend Carla De Sola, who's a well-known liturgical dancer. Frank, she's one
Hello,
of my
Carla.
friends. She's in Berkeley.
Hi.
Eugene, I think I've met you, right? Did I meet you in Jerusalem? Eugene?
No, I've never been there.
Oh, okay. I thought I met you. You looked
Okay.
familiar. I thought you. And Marilyn, hi, welcome, Marilyn, my friend.
Hi. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah.
So I just let's ask Frank questions. Frank, what Well, I wanted to point something out to you is that on my many visits to Jerusalem, I always usually used to travel on a Friday, and then there'd be some event in Alaska Moscow. The last time I was there, there were a bunch of Orthodox who smuggled in a goat or a sheep, I forget, and tried to sacrifice it inside the mosque. That created, huge disruption. And and then the palace, everybody went nuts. So the whole place was shut down and I got trapped. I couldn't get to Ibrahim's house on Mount of Olives because everything was shut down. And because it was Friday, all the Muslims were on their way to pray and they blocked the entry. So where I was filled with guys with rugs on their heads trying to go to prayer. But one thing I want to point out that it's an archaeological question of dispute whether the second temple was actually there, whether the Wailing Wall was a separate temple. Several art historians and archaeologists say that it was really the wall from a Roman fortress, that there's not clear evidence that they think the temple may have actually been in another place. So there's a lot of dispute about the traditional plan. But what I wanted to ask you is, Kushner is there now, isn't he? I think hiding from Trump. And didn't all this settler expansion begin since Trump has come in? It was going on before, but I don't think it's been.
Yeah.
What do you?
It has definitely exacerbated because they feel that, look, they've got an ally. Israel is getting $1 million pretty much a day. And a lot of that is being sent into the military and the police to be sent into the West Bank. And the settlers see this, and they see that the soldiers and the police that are armed and are powerful, more and more powerful all the time, support what they're doing. So it's kind of like a chain of events. And I believe you're right. They feel that since Trump is in office, whether verbally Trump has, he's for all intents and purposes verbally supported them. He sent his boy, Secretary of State Pompeo, right, who went to the settlement, one of the settlements, and then he turns around, and this is another issue with annexation. I'm glad you brought this up, is that he said products from the settlement should not be marked from settlement, should be marked from Israel, because they're trying to hide the idea that these products were manufactured on stolen, illegal land. But what does that mean? And again, I think he's just not bright enough to understand what he implied there is, you disagree with annexation, officially the US government, but you're saying that if products come from the settlement, it's the same as Israel. It means you've annexed these settlements as part of Israel, impliedly. So this has also exacerbated the settlement issue big time. Yeah, and given and literally blown wind in the sails of the settlers.
Interesting. I don't know. I have not been following so much, but I understand the reasoning that you just did, Frank. That's for sure.
Any other? I mean, like you folks don't have to agree with me. Some like Jackie said when I said something about, it's true. It's alleged these archaeological roots of the Second Temple, but they also the Israeli government is tunneling underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque here now, and they're making a lot of tunnels underneath. And there's the issue as well. You are making findings, and maybe even ignoring findings of existence of Muslim or Arab existence, and just privileging, trying to prove that the Jews were originally there, and privileging any artifacts that you find, privileging the Jewish narrative or the Israeli narrative or Jewish narrative. That's all. You're absolutely right, Jackie. It's still debatable, and they're still trying to find more and more evidence of this and that. I mean, my idea, and very quickly, is that the Jews and the Muslims. I mean, the Jews and the Arabs came in about the same time through Abraham, 2,000 years BC, coming in from Mesopotamia. Both the Jews and the Arabs, especially the Muslim Arabs, seek heritage through Abraham. So if this seems about 2000 BC came into this area of the Holy Land from Mesopotamia, then you could say that they did come in about the same time. So let's forget about all this. I was here first, therefore I have. I mean, the facts on the ground is we're all here. Let's try and make the best of it, shouldn't we? Let's
Yes.
try and don't we want essentially the same things? And we're very similar in many ways.
It's as if our own consciousness having developed, as to what our, um, the dreams and goals of humankind in getting together.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, very interesting way of putting it. Yes, I like the way you put it that way.
So
Anybody else? Eugene, do you have any comments or questions or about anything? Jackie?
No, I'm
yeah.
learning entirely from this conversation and from this group, and I'm very happy that Fareed invited me to this Zoom meeting.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, Fareed's a very good friend of ours, to say the least.
Where are you living, Eugene?
Well, I live in the Morningside Heights
Okay.
section.
Yeah. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's what amazes me is that people don't know so much of this information, that there's been a deliberate campaign to prevent people from hearing the full picture, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this program. One of the programs I want to do, because I met a lot of, because I'm an art historian, archaeologist, I know a lot of really great archaeologists who are very much involved in this battle of narrative amongst the archaeologists, and is a real issue of the Christian and Muslim sites getting destroyed in Palestine. So I plan to have a future program focusing on this archaeological battle that's going on, this duel that actually the Universal Archaeological Congress has put as a flag, put a red flag on it as being a real issue.
Right.
Marilyn, do you have any questions?
No, just an observation. I mean, it's like the Israelis have been treating the Palestinians as second-class citizens, and it's, that the brown versus the white. And I have to say that perfect example of when the vaccination became available, Netanyahu said that he would be taking it as well as all the Israelis, but who would have to wait? The Palestinians.
Yeah.
So again, another example, of this craziness that goes on.
And there's also an issue against Jews of color, like the Ethiopian
Yes.
Jews and the Sephardim. They don't like the Sephardim because the Sephardim have a lot of what they consider Arab characteristics, culturally, so that they're also at the bottom of the ladder.
Right.
Well, you have an Ashkenazi type of racism.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very Eurocentric to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And they have always discriminated against the Ethiopian Jews, many other Jews from Central Asia. And it seems that I just cannot believe anything that any official statement out of Israel with any kind of credibility at all. And I agree with Noam Chomsky that he believed in the early type of Zionism, which was an egalitarian philosophy. And as we have seen, Israel has become a far right Zionist fascist state.
I mentioned last week that Herzl, when I did my research on my film on Jerusalem that I'll be showing, we'll do another session on Jerusalem. What shocked me is when I read Herzl's early Zionist documents, I was blown away. His idea was for Israel to be a total utopia with peace and harmony between Jews, Muslims, Christians, everybody treated equally, where they would set up this wonderful society of sharing and mutual respect, harmony, that would be a model for the rest of the world. That was his idea. Of course, that's not what happened, but I was quite surprised at the visionary idea of the early Zionists was not at all racist, was not directed against the Arabs, both Christian and Muslim. So I found that to be quite interesting.
Well, the word Zionism that Herschel set forth, it originally came, from the idea of let's just find a homeland, especially for the Jews, since he had assisted, gone to these hearings hearings in France. This is like around the latter part of 1800s. Dreyfus, a French captain, Jewish captain, was falsely accused of collaborating with the enemy. And all these racist and anti-Semitic slogans were being voiced in the streets, even without him being condemned for anything, just accused. He said, darn it, one way or the other, us Jews, are always going to find some type of ethnic racism wherever we go, or racism, or discrimination against us. We need to get a homeland. But he had empathy, you see, and this, what you're saying, is how his empathy was manifested. Why I'm not surprised at all, because Zionism was coined by the UN. Unfortunately, then it was equated with imperialism and ethnic cleansing, which the original definition of Zionism wasn't that at all. And I think Herzl is also thought of by many, Zionist Jews as being the father of Zionism. And well, if you go back, you find he had empathy for suffering people that weren't just about Jews. Homeland for Jews, yeah, but homeland for, like you say, I'm not surprised. Homeland, a homeland where people could go without any type of discrimination, and not just for the Jews.
He was very secular too. He didn't like religious Orthodox Judaism. He refused to have his son circumcised even. So, he was quite a radical in many ways.
Are you going to show us some of your artwork, Jackie?
If anybody else has any questions for Frank,
please, or Jackie, or comments. I mean,
It's enlightening. It's very enlightening. Thank you, because I don't know the ins and outs of all the history. I was in Jerusalem once in 1990. That was the first Intifada. So some of it is I can picture and stuff, and the Wailing Wall and all of that. It's very interesting to me, but I'm learning from you the ins and outs of of that, and that's fascinating. Thank you.
All right, everybody, I'm going to share talk about some of my artwork that I've done about the settlers and about the situation. Let me zoom my screen out a little bit. I had a big exhibit in Jordan in a couple years ago that I was fortunate enough to have an exhibit at Bandat Gallery, a very nice gallery in Jordan called Endangered Land, People and Heritage. It was opened actually and sponsored by the mayor of Amman, Dr. Yusuf Ashawarbach, and he actually ended up buying one of my paintings, which for his office, which was very nice.
Wow.
So, the first one, The Land, this painting, it was my first one I did, called Welcome to Jordan. My first painting in Jordan responded to the warm greetings I received when I arrived. Welcome to Jordan, that's what you hear all the time. It was a constant mantra from all whom I met. I toured major heritage sites, which I have documented here in collage around the painting, and discovered the beauty and diversity of its geography and its rich history. It's a whole huge archaeological site, the entire country. But I also became aware of the many clouds of conflict surrounding Jordan, very connected, and that's endangering its land that becomes worse every year. I arrived there in 2007. This was another painting called Walking Through Jordan Looking for Water, an acrylic collage, very large, about 4 feet. This painting reflects on the struggle for water in Jordan, who loses much of its water to Israel and Syria, who take a lot of the water illegally from Jordan. And it's also affected by climate change and droughts. I painted this during the International Symposium of Artists organized by Hilda Hiati, a very famous Middle Eastern artist, for the Ministry of Culture in 2009. And they also bought several of my paintings. The artists printed their feet on the canvas. So I had all the artists put the feet in paint and printed on the canvas, and we all walked in the water, including the noted Jordanian artist Suhail Salim Bakhaim, who runs a wonderful program for the arts for the handicapped. This was a major installation on the Mavi Marmara flotilla, and I'm going to do a program on the Mavi Marmara in the future. It was a very large installation with one large painting showing the Mavi Marmara surrounded by all the martyrs who were killed. If you don't know about the Mavi Marmara, I'll read you this. So many Jordanians have roots in Palestine. Events in Gaza profoundly affect everybody there. Everybody has a relative in Gaza. This installation is a memorial to the men killed by the Israeli Defense Forces on the Mavi Marmara sailing to Gaza with supplies in 2011. 9 volunteers were shot dead on the boat. One later died after being in a coma for 4 years. Now, I started doing this because my first portrait was of the 19-year-old Turkish American Furkan Dogan. And this is like really weird what happened. Let me go up. I ended up painting this. I went on to old footage of pictures, and I got this CNN picture here of, and here's the breaking news, you know, the captions underneath. And this was the only picture I could find of when this young man was actually shot. Here's the IDF officer. Here's the picture of the man being shot. So I lightened it to try to see better what was going on to create a painting. And when I lightened it, all of a sudden, a bearded face appeared in the picture. I said, is this Jesus? Is this Moses? Is this Muhammad? It freaked me out. And it was like this face came out at me, like this prophet came out at me and said, paint these paintings. so I painted the rest of them, you know, all the guys I went to all of them and I painted every one of them. It took me a year, but it was very, very important for me to do. So I'm trying to sell this to the Turkish embassy. They were going to buy it, then they changed ambassadors, and now I'm stuck here in Amman. This is in Jordan. I paint this. These things are in Jordan, but I have a story about each of the guys. So when I do the program on the Mavi Marmara, you'll hear the incredible story. Each one of these guys was such a hero. They were poets, they were artists, they were designers, they were electricians, they were firemen, all going to volunteer to help people in Gaza. Now, Gaza, right? This is another weird painting. I went to the peace bus with Gaza. Remember, Frank, after I met you in Jerusalem?
Yeah.
And then I went on this peace bus to Gaza because it was a lull in the bombing. And the soldiers from Breaking the Silence, which is a group of Israeli soldiers who felt guilty about what they had to do in the army, and they formed a group called Breaking the Silence, where they let everybody know all the junk that goes on. So this was a large painting that I did. But what happened is I had started this painting horizontally, and I never finished. I just did this like background with a lot of swishy stuff in it, and I didn't finish it. When I came back from the peace bus to Gaza, and then I heard, you know, with the renewed bombing, I took an old canvas and I turned it vertically, and all of a sudden an angel appeared. See the angel here, the face, the wings? I didn't paint it. It was there from my old, when I had done it, you know, a year before, just swishing around, going to do a cloud painting. Suddenly there's this angel. I said, this is my Gaza angel, and they're all protecting the people in Gaza. So then what I did was I painted, you know, a whole bunch of people, collage people from Gaza, people holding their dead children, bombed cities, you know, the whole work. So that was, but you know, this angel came out of nowhere. It was waiting for me to turn it vertically. You know, art is very weird. Really, when you're an artist, very weird things happen to you. You know, And this is my Gaza bombing 1 and 2. These were painted with collage photos and newspaper headlines about the bombings in Gaza. I could hear the horrific sounds of bombs from the home of Nomika Zion, who founded a group in Israel called Other Voice, which is a very anti-war group, whom we visited in Siderat on the international peace trip to Gaza. We had to discontinue the trip because they started bombing again. And she told me how opposed many Israelis, particularly the ones who live in this area, are to the bombing, that they feel they're suffering as much as the people in Gaza from the noise of the bombing. You know, the kids wet their beds and the people are having heart attacks, the stress. She felt Netanyahu was holding them as hostages in these, the Israelis who live in these borders. So this is one collage about the bombing of the UN hospital in Gaza. And the UN had to stop working because they were bombing their staff, the UN staff. And this one shows more collage headlines, mass arrests, and the white phosphorus, which is so deadly, that was being shown thrown on people in Gaza. The really deadly stuff. And this was one of the first pictures I saw while trying to get across the border over the bridge. I was thrown in with all the Palestinians who we come on the bus from Amman. It's usually mostly Jordanian Palestinians. And you were thrown into a big cage together where Jordanians are trying to visit their families in Palestine. I was there during Eid. And I often observe the long lines and great difficulties they endure when they try to cross the border bridge. And I snuck and I took photos of them and used them in my paintings. Once I was interrogated for 7 hours trying to cross. On the same day, Noah Chomsky, also collaged in the painting, was detained and turned away. I was questioned 7 hours, but because I have relatives in Beersheba, they let me in. But Noah Chomsky, they threw out. They wouldn't let him come in. Now at the crossing, they segregate the Palestinians and Jordanians from other groups. So you don't see, if you're an expat, you know, from America or Europe, you don't see what they do to the Palestinians. So you can't see how they're treated. So in the painting, I have the pictures of the refugees, the people crossing, with the settlements at the top and the wall. And here is Noah Chomsky. And here's a young boy who was arrested and with a Israeli at gunpoint. Here's an Israeli with a gun, pointing the gun at him, and other collage images of the, you know, the horrible things that are going on to Palestinians. I mean, you can't believe it till you see it. I was talking to somebody yesterday, I said, who was, you know, defending Israel. I said, look, you go and visit. Once you see it, that's a different story. Go to Palestine and you'll see things, you know, don't believe me, don't believe what you read, just go there and see it. Now, this painting was fun. It celebrated the courage of the women of Gaza who got sick and tired of not having diapers, wedding gowns, mattresses and clothes and food for their children due to the Israeli blockade. The Israelis even blockaded pasta. They wouldn't even let pasta in Gaza. So the women got fed up, and one day at the Rafah crossing, which is close to Egypt, the women climbed over the fence to shop. So the painting is called Women in Gaza Shop Till You Drop. Yeah. And the fence was breached for nearly a week, which was a cause of great celebration as women and men just shopped. You know, finally it was repaired and the border closed. The reason why they could do it is because it was the other side was Egypt. And the Egyptian soldiers were reluctant to touch the women. So they weren't going to touch the women to stop them. So there was this joyful period of, and here's Delacroix's victory leading the people, leading the women to shop. So Delacroix leading the women.
Wow.
And here's St. George protecting them with Mary collaged here. So they are all protected and the women had a wonderful week shopping. Terrorist activity, right? And so those are you know, some of my paintings about the situation, and I'll show the whole film about the exhibit on a future meeting. But I still have, tons of art that I've done. That it's all sitting in Jordan, and I have. But what's interesting is how many people, when I send them an invitation to this meeting or an invitation to one of my exhibits. Oh, I did paintings about Rachel Corrie, who was killed in by a bulldozer. Did some other paintings of called Ghosts of Palestine. So I have a whole bunch of really, I keep producing stuff as as things get bad. But most of my work is in Jordan, of course.
Yeah.
So,
It's
anyhow,
very moving, Jackie.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
very moving. Yeah, beautiful.
thank
Yes,
you.
I
Yeah.
agree. Marilyn, it's beautiful, fascinating. It's developed.
Yeah.
I haven't seen your paintings since early days. And when you said
Mm.
clouds of conflict, I said her cloud paintings,
Yeah.
clouds of conflict. That was interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a call at 1 I have to take. So if I disappear, will you
Oh.
be back on
Well,
after 10 minutes?
Anyway, I just wanted to let you know the schedule coming up. So January 3rd, the first Sunday of each month, we're going to do poetry because the poetry session last week was so successful. And poets all want to come back and do their poetry again. So we'll do once a month on Sunday, just poetry sessions. So write your own poems and join, or invite other people. There's so much wonderful poetry about the situation. So January 3rd, I'm going to invite Neil Boyle, who's a publisher from England. She's the one who published Farid's books. And I'll invite her to discuss how she came upon the idea of publishing Palestinian poets and what the experience has been like. So she'll be a moderator. Then January 10th, what I'd like to do is a session on Palestine before 1948. People have, especially Americans, had this idea that there was nothing in Palestine before 1948, that it was just sort of camels and, backward people. Actually, one of the doctors who examined me recently said, well, Israel keeps all those countries going. There would be nothing there in the Arab countries without Israel, and Israel's the one who got them wherever they have. And I said, well, that Palestine was very progressive and advanced. I mean, the women were all in plaid skirts and what do you call those black and white shoes that we used to wear, Carl? Remember those? Saddle shoes, they call them. Saddle shoes with socks. And they were all getting education and becoming doctors, lawyers in Palestine. It wasn't backward at all. I happen to be friends with the granddaughter of the publisher of Philistine, which was the first a big Palestinian newspaper that the Israelis forced to shut down. But it was a very progressive paper. And I'm going to invite her to come and talk, and then also have Kelvin show his wonderful photographs of Palestine, where Jews, Muslims, Christians together in Palestine before 1948. Wow. And to show how what a rich culture Palestine had before 48. It wasn't nothing. It wasn't an empty space, waiting for progressive people to come in. There were a lot of progressive people already in Palestine. Ramallah had 4 symphony orchestras.
Little Ramallah, 4 symphony orchestras.
4 symphony orchestras, because the had come in the 1800s and set up schools, and they had music schools, and they trained musicians. So this myth that Palestine was just empty and backward is totally true. So January 10th. January 17th, we're going to have Phil Hopper and Steve Bloom. Phil is a colleague of mine. Frank, you know Phil. He has done a wonderful study of graffiti from Belfast in Ireland and the West Bank. And he photographed extensively the graffiti of both places and done a remarkable job of interviewing and comparing the graffiti from the 2 oppressed places, Ireland and Palestine. And it's a fascinating story, and his photographs are wonderful. And Steve Bloom, who was a poet who joined us last week, a friend of Fareed. He has spent a lot of time writing poetry about the graffiti that he saw when he was in Belfast. He spent a lot of time in Belfast, so I'm inviting him.
I was in Belfast once.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Paramila at Peace Institute in outside of Belfast, but
Oh,
I flew
wow.
into Belfast. I remember
Okay.
most of it.
Oh, join us, Carla. That's on the 17th, because you could share your experiences with it. That would be fabulous.
Jackie, are these all at 3? Are they all at the same
Yeah.
time at 3
Yeah, I'm
o'clock?
gonna move them up to 3 o'clock.
Okay.
It's easier.
Okay.
You know, with church, in the morning, it's
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And January 24th, I just noted that there was some victory for the tough students for Palestine, that they won a court case against their advocacy for BDS and for Palestine at Tufts University in Massachusetts. So I'm going to try to get a hold of some student groups to talk to us about the students' effort on the 24th. So that's the month of January. Inshallah, with luck, and we'll get through. And I'm going to try to do my my New Year's Eve one-person protest at the Israeli consulate on New Year's Eve or January 1st. I'm not sure. I'll see what the weather is. I'm not sure what I'm going to be protesting. There's so much to protest. So we'll see what happens this week. If you have any good ideas that I should use on a sign, let me know. So I may be the only one, but that's okay.
I'm amazed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So good to hear Frank. All that
Thank
said.
you, Frank.
And thank you,
Thank you.
Frank.
You
Yeah.
bet. Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Marilyn, Marilyn, you live in West Bath?
No, I live in Brooklyn. I'm here in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Marilyn, for some reason, I don't see you. I see you come on when you talk, but I don't see your photo.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
face up there.
It's a bad hair day, so that's why.
She's
But
see.
next time you will.
You blocked your hair. Good for you.
She's from Grace Church. She's from Grace Church in Brooklyn, where I take my grandkids.
Yeah.
So
I
Grace
see.
Church is a wonderful
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Thank you,
way,
everybody,
I'll
for
make
being a part
YouTube
of this.
Yeah. I'll make a YouTube of this and upload it, send it to everybody, so people who can't come, you can forward it to people who might be interested. So so I'm gonna blow out my candle of light, and I'm sending it to you, to each one of you, to be a light in the darkness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
God bless you.